WFYI podcasts are made possible by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering experiences like indulging in grub at Nick's English Hut, taking a stroll along Kirkwood Avenue, feeling the history and magic of Assembly Hall, and providing the chance to feel like a college kid again. Plan your trip at visitbloomington.com.
We're going to take a trip right now. Like we always do about this time.
This is a journey into sound. Break it down.
I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. My guest this week is the composer and multi-instrumentalist Leon Todd Johnson. He creates ambient, classically inspired music under the name Airport People. We'll listen to tracks from Johnson's latest release, Midwest Dispossessed, a collaboration with photographer Michael Ginda. The Midwest Dispossessed album includes a 136-page book of photography by Ginda, along with Johnson's musical score. The project has been described as a blend of visual and auditory art that explores the current state of rural communities in and around the Wabash Valley. Leon Todd Johnson will join me in a moment, but first, let's hear the opening movement from Midwest Dispossessed. This is Airport People with Part 1. That was Airport People with Midwest Dispossessed, Part 1. And my guest this week is the composer and multi-instrumentalist Leon Todd Johnson of Airport People. Let's join our conversation. Thank you so much for being here, Leon.
Thank you for having me.
I'm a fan of your work, and I'm very interested in learning more about you and how this project came together.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. I'm just really happy that you invited me down.
Yeah. I was reading your bio, and it sounds like you traveled a lot as a young person, and I think that actually inspired the project's name, Airport People. From what I read, you've lived in Arizona, Texas, and now Indiana. Tell me about the role of travel in your life and what brought you to Indiana.
Yeah. So I was in Jersey City before here. Before then, the San Antonio, and then before then I was in Indianapolis, or I was in Purdue. Those moves were because I graduated from Purdue and commissioned in the Air Force, and the Air Force kind of moved me in those directions. So San Antonio was my first assignment. Then I worked out of Newark. My wife worked in Manhattan, and we settled in Jersey City. And then after that, we decided it was time to come back to Indianapolis because her family was here. You know, we had a lot of really good friends in the area, and it just felt right.
Was this an appealing place for you to kind of plant roots?
Honestly, yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love my family, or I love our family. And the music scene here is just like, you know, the community here is unmatched. And also it was nice to know that I had friends and I could pursue music and everything. So yeah, it was definitely appealing. It was a big shift, but it was good.
Was I correct that spending time in airports inspired the project's name?
It definitely did.
Yeah. In what way? What about the environment of the airport spoke to you?
Well, when I was a kid, I always we did travel a lot, and I always looked forward to going on the airplane. And I always found it kind of interesting and maybe romantic, the people in the airport. Nobody really knows where everybody is going or where they're coming, but we're all sort of in this shared liminal space, and we're all just people waiting for wherever we're going. and we don't need to know much about where everybody else is going, but I always found it touching to just watch people with their people, seeing people arriving or leaving and greeting people who they haven't seen in a while or saying goodbye to people who they hope to see again. It's just a little emotional for me, but that's where the airport came from. I relate to airport people, and there's also just a nice nod to music for airports. So
I was going to ask you if that had been a key influence in your work. Yeah, the famous Brian Eno album. Your music incorporates a lot of elements of ambient music. Brian Eno was an influence then on the sound of your music. Yeah,
definitely solid influence.
One last question about your bio before we move on, because this really fascinated me. I read that your grandfather was an anti-apartheid activist in South Africa. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Who was your grandfather? And tell us about his work there. I have to ask. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. So my grandfather's name was Leon Howard Sullivan, and he was a civil rights activist in the United States, of course, but he was also he spearheaded, I suppose would be the word, a lot of international relations in education and self-help between American teachers and teachers in sub-Saharan Africa. So basically, on one hand, bringing teachers to go teach in Africa and, sort of make that relationship stronger. The other thing is he started an organization that, again, self-help, so training people that otherwise might find themselves on the streets and sort of training them so that they can get jobs. And he was a great man, and growing up, we learn a lot about the things that he'd done and the people that he's worked with and all the work. And what I just said was a very small fraction of what he had done. Peaceful protest, we usually associate that with Martin Luther King. But Martin Luther King and my grandfather were not strangers. So yeah, he did a lot of stuff sort of behind the radar or under the radar, which I think is why maybe his name is less known, but I don't think that was an accident.
That's incredible. How does that legacy impact decisions you make in life, or does it? Is it something that kind of informs who you are as a person?
Yeah, it definitely does. Maybe the short story is the very big shoes to fill. And as I get older, I learn more about how I've been trying to fill those shoes in my own way. So I feel like I need to do that. But recently I'm learning it's unfair for me to compare myself to a Medal of Freedom winner. So I need that's my current work. But yeah, it definitely changes the way that I think about myself in the world.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I want to ask about the role music has played in your life. From what I understand, you're a classically trained violinist. At what point did you start playing and studying music?
Yeah. I started when I was like 3 or 5. I don't know. Very young. My mom gave me the violin, so I started playing the violin. I think somewhere before early teens, like before high school, I stopped for a little while. I don't know why. It's a hard instrument, and my parents were like trying to get me to practice, especially my dad, and I thank him for that. But I think I was like burned out. So then I stopped, and then in middle school, I think I played the upright bass for the first time, and I was like, this is really cool. High school, I started picking up other instruments. And then after college, I wanted to pick up the piano. So the piano came probably when I was in Jersey City. So like 2015, 16. And I feel way more connected with the piano and the bass than I do with my violin. But something like that.
What type of music did you gravitate towards as a young person or a teenager? What sort of things excited you?
When I was young, playing the violin, I was excited about learning more like classical music and Baroque music and romantic music especially. So I really liked learning that. But then probably felt more connected with music in high school when I started listening to jazz, maybe fusion jazz, complex jazz, prog jazz, and that's what really cemented my bass playing was the jazz.
The music you're creating as Airport People is very unique. It incorporates those elements from classical music. It incorporates elements of jazz, and there's a strong ambient quality to the music as well. You also utilize found sound and field recordings interpolated into the pieces. Tell me about developing the concept of Airport People. Was this something that kind of came to you as a fully realized idea that you wanted to refine, or is this something that you've kind of been exploring over time?
I had just been playing music with other bands, like as the bass player or the violinist or whatever, but Airport People, the idea, you could ask my friends, I think I was talking about that like early college, but it never really became anything until recently. I suppose the answer to your question is, I don't think that it was consciously cooked up. I think that it was unconsciously cooked up. And when I finally had the time, when I moved to Indianapolis, interestingly enough, when I moved to Indianapolis, I finally had the time to sort of explore my own music. The first release, that Edness release, the Wind in the Willows thing, that was like, I like to call it my musical barf, because I think I just had like a bunch of just stuff that needed to be released. Literally. So literally and figuratively, I just needed to have a bunch of stuff released. So it was like musical barf, and it is what it is. I'm happy I did it. It was inspired by a few different artists that I really like, and I guess I just sort of built off from there, you know, sort of finding my voice after speaking for the first time.
And it was around 2020 that you issued the first project as Airport People. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How has it grown over time since then? It's been 4+ years, right, of working on this?
Yeah, I think I've gotten better. I think I'm starting to find, like, what I sound like, you know? I think the musical barf release was just, like, a lot of stuff, and it was just like I don't know what I was doing. I think I just wanted to make sounds that I thought were cool, but I know that I've gotten better since then. So I think now I'm starting to see and hear what I sound like, and what I want to sound like. Finding a personal sound is happening now when it wasn't happening then.
Cultural Manifesto will return after this short break.
WFYI podcasts are made possible by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering experiences like indulging in grub at Nick's English Hut, taking a stroll along Kirkwood Avenue, feeling the history and magic of Assembly Hall, and providing the chance to feel like a college kid again. Plan your trip at visitbloomington.com.
I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. My guest this week is the composer and multi-instrumentalist Leon Todd Johnson. He creates music under the name Airport People. Let's return to our conversation. And Leon, you have an excellent new album out titled Midwest Dispossessed. This is a very unique project. On your Bandcamp page, you describe the album as a 4-part blend of visual and auditory art. And I know there's an accompanying book of photos that is being released with the album, correct? Tell us about Midwest Dispossessed.
Yeah, I actually brought the book with me.
Oh, great.
So, Midwest Dispossessed. There's a friend of mine, Dylan Schwab from college. There's like no person in the world that I think respects art as much as I think Dylan does. And what he's created is Pseudoscope, which is an avenue for him to pursue releasing art that he likes. Some of his friends, me included, he'll like reach out and be like, do you have anything that we can work on? This was, I think, his idea, but there's another friend of ours, Michael Ginda, who's a photographer, and Dylan reached out to me and he was like, let's do this thing where because Ginda's got tons of photography, he's like, why don't we do a thing where we use his photography and your music and like you write music for the photography and we do a thing. So that's what happened. He sent me, Ginda put his photography up. I looked through it, jot down some words that I was thinking from it, and then just wrote something. I had wanted to write a full like X number of movement piece that I could have other musicians play on. And this was another outlet for me to do that too. So that's how that came about.
And these photos are all taken in, is it Wabash, Indiana or the Wabash Valley area? I wasn't sure what the exact region was.
In and around.
Okay.
So there's some stuff I think in Illinois. There's stuff in northern Indiana, southern Indiana. Ginda goes all over the place and takes like really awesome photos.
You brought together a unique group of musicians, Indianapolis musicians, for this project. Tell us about who we're listening to on this record. Some familiar names for people who listen to WFYI.
Yeah, for sure. So alphabetically, Clockwork Jans is a friend and a talented oboe player / composer. We've been playing a little bit in other projects recently too. So Clockwork plays the oboe and sort of helped when we were recording, keeping me from going crazy because I think I'm a perfectionist, and they sort of allowed like, a little more breathing room, which was very comforting. Eric Salazar, the clarinet player. Oh my gosh. Eric is amazing, and I'm very privileged to play with him. And Jesse Lee is amazing, as I'm sure you know. Yeah. Jesse's great. Jesse plays the cello, just beautifully plays the cello. That's the group.
Yeah, an amazing sound on the record. I'm going to play up next my favorite piece from the work, Part 2. That track has an incredible sound. It almost reminds me a bit of Arthur Russell. Not sure if you're familiar with his work, but it has that kind of flavor to it. Tell me about that movement in the piece.
Yeah, so two's the bouncy one. All of these pieces started with a melody, and 2, if I remember correctly, for some reason, I guess I felt like something should be a little more like energetic. So the melody was a little more energetic, I suppose. And then I just recorded it And then I just felt like it needed to have some like a pad to sort of fill out the bottom. So then I used some like synth equipment that I use to just like make something, but it had to be bouncy. It had to have a rhythm thing. So I did that. And I feel like sometimes I just add field recordings just because like I like them. I don't know. At this point, I'm like, is this getting cliche? But I don't know. I like it. So I just added that in. And I think that's how that one came about.
Yeah, it's a unique sound. I want to share that track now. This is Airport People with Midwest Dispossessed Part 2. I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. My guest this week is the composer and multi-instrumentalist Leon Todd Johnson of Airport People. We just heard part 2 from Airport People's new album, Midwest Dispossessed. And Leon, up next, I want to share part 3 from Midwest Dispossessed. You just mentioned the use of field recordings in the work. This movement has a lot of sort of ambient nature sounds. Tell me about what we're hearing on this piece in particular, and what is it about incorporating found sound into the work that appeals to you as a composer and producer?
Yeah. So all the recordings on this are from around the Midwest, but maybe I should be more specific. There's a cabin that my partner and I go to in Seaman, Ohio, and I got a bunch of really good field recordings in Seaman, Ohio, and the other half of the field recordings just come from my house. So like I put the field recorder outside during the rain or outside by the window, that kind of thing. Why do I put them in there? Like, what do I like about it? It's like comforting or something. Like it gives a sort of like airiness, you know, to the sound. Like it's like without it, like without the field recordings, unless you have like someone who's just like really good at engineering and setting up the room and like getting a good room sound, sometimes it's easy for a recording to just sound like hollow or like in a vacuum, you know. And the field recording, to me, adds a little bit of, like, air. So I like the airiness that comes from it. Also, it's just, like, soothing to hear birds and, like, the wind and, honestly, children laughing. Children laughing is, like, I think every now and again when that comes in, it's just, like, it just makes things feel bright. So, yeah, I think that's why.
Yeah,
something
great
like
answer.
That.
Yeah, and I love the way you use them differently in different recordings. I think there was one on From 9 Mornings that you were kind of cutting off and on, and it had this very percussive feel to it. So yeah, you find some very unique and creative ways to integrate them into the compositions.
Yeah, thanks for noticing.
Well, let's listen to part 3 from Midwest Dispossessed. This is Airport People. I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. My guest this week is the composer and multi-instrumentalist Leon Todd Johnson of Airport People. We just heard part 3 from Airport People's new album, Midwest Dispossessed, available now on Bandcamp. I know. Where else?
Yes, it's on Bandcamp. Yeah. Also,
the book?
Yeah, the book. Sorry, I'm grabbing it. The book is available on the Pseudoscope Big Cartel website. if you go to the Bandcamp, I think there's a link to Pseudoscope to get the book. And there's also a whole bunch of other stuff that Dylan's put out on Pseudoscope.
You just released the album a couple weeks ago. What's the feedback been so far? Are people responding to the work?
Honestly, the feedback is like, I'm hard on myself.
Okay.
And Jesse, thank you, Jesse, is trying to get me to be kinder to myself. I honestly was like, I don't know what people are going to think about this. Because, like, you know, the recording got a little scrappy sometimes. And I was like, what is going on? And Dylan's like, dude, that's great. That's how it should sound. It's very real. Live recordings are supposed to sound real. And I purposefully got everybody in the room. But I was like, I don't know, man. But honestly, the reception is amazing. And it's really just speaks to the performance of these people. Like Eric, Clockwork, and Jesse are just like professionals. You know, they're like, I couldn't have asked for a better crew. And I think that's why the reception is so good, because they know they're just so good at what they do. So yeah, people really like it. I'm impressed.
Yeah, they have a great synergy on this recording. Did you write the parts specifically for them, or did you kind of adapt the piece to this ensemble?
It was specifically for them. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I was like, you know, what musicians do I have that would be down with doing something like this that would work? And those three came to mind, and it was definitely written for them.
Leon, you're creating a really unique body of work as Airport People. Where do you want to take this project? What do you see as the future of Airport People?
I don't know, man. I've got a couple other projects that are coming up this year and one release that should come out next year. I don't know where it's going to go. I have always wanted to write music for film. So that's one thing that's coming up. There's an event at the Can that I'll be doing with Rob Funkhauser. The date is not 100% set yet, but maybe for people who are interested, that will be really cool. So in answer to your question, I think I'd like to do more stuff like that, like film stuff, partnerships with film, photography. That I think is what's most interesting to me, because I find it nice to write music for things. I don't know. I think maybe that is, maybe that is where it should go, or something like that.
The new album from Airport People is titled Midwest Dispossessed. It's an incredible piece of work. We're going to end with the final movement, part 4. Anything you want to say about that piece before we listen, or any final thoughts you want to share with our listeners here in Indiana?
I suppose it would be appropriate for me to be candid here. I have so much gratitude for the people, including you, like the listeners and the people and the musicians, like the community in Indianapolis, the musical community, the people who listen to the music, just everyone here. It's staggering to me how caring and truthfully interested everyone is to help others and to appreciate others. Like Mark Tester, Landon Caldwell, you know, these guys have helped create like just like a synergistic musical community where everybody wants to help everybody. People like you who are bringing out artists like me so that other people know about it that might not have otherwise. And just the fact that people are into it, it just blows my mind. There are not a lot of places in the world where everyone is so cordial to artists and to others. And the Midwest Dispossessed is the idea behind it, the Midwest Dispossessed philosophy. The idea I think that Ginda was going for with his gallery was that we're here temporarily as humans, and nature will always win. And there are things around us that we can see in these photos that are evidence of things that used to be. But there's like an appreciation that comes with the Midwest that is maybe being taken by nature in a good way, a positive way. But I don't know, it just makes me feel more happy to be here and appreciative of the people and the Midwest in general. So maybe I'll say that. Yeah, just there's too many artists in Indianapolis for me to name. Like Tom Lagavine, a good friend of mine, his music here is amazing. I've got so much respect for that guy. I wish I could name everybody. I just, like, top of my head, I can't right now. But yeah, that's what I'll say. Midwest. Yay.
Midwest Dispossessed is available now through Bandcamp. Leon, thank you so much for taking time to be here. I'm a big fan of the music you're creating, and it was great to have you on the show and learn more about you and your work. So I'm very appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Airport People with Midwest Dispossessed, Part 4. That's all the time we have for this week. Thanks to my guest, Leon Todd Johnson of Airport People. Check out the Cultural Manifesto podcast at WFYI.org or wherever you download your podcasts. Cultural Manifesto is hosted and produced by me, Kyle Long. Thank you for listening.
WFYI podcasts are made possible by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering experiences like indulging in grub at Nick's English Hut, taking a stroll along Kirkwood Avenue, feeling the history and magic of Assembly Hall, and providing the chance to feel like a college kid again. Plan your trip at visitbloomington.com.